Among the top 100 players on Pixelborn, Amethyst has a positive win rate into every single deck. Today, I'll be showing you how a player last week made top 16 in the TCG Player $5,000 tournament with this list. Alright, and here is the deck, Amethyst Aggro Zoo by the player Terran Hut. As you can see, this deck has quite a low curve, which tells us that we want to play lots of minions early and flood the board, especially with some of our high quest 1 drops like Maleficent and Lilo. In most aggro decks, due to the state of the meta, the goal of the deck is to win by turn 6, as you want to win before the turn 7 Be Prepared gets played in the Ruby Amethyst matchup. Especially when it comes to these control matchups, we want to force our opponent to use their removal inefficiently. Fortunately, with the stat line of Lilo and Maleficent, we won't be dodging any grab your swords, but maybe in other matchups, by using Simba to protect them with Bodyguard, we can force them to use certain removal like Dragonfire inefficiently to remove a high questing character. And if we do face some area removal like a grab your sword or a Be Prepared, then we do have some options to refuel our engine in a sense and keep the tempo going, keep the pressure on our opponent. In the aggro mirror, you do have to be keenly aware of the state of the tempo of the game and how to control it. Now let's go over some of the key cards in the deck. The two most important cards I would say are probably Lilo and Maleficent. These are our turn 1 drops that apply the most pressure in the game because they can quest for 2, and if your opponent doesn't have a way to respond to that, then you're going to be able to get 2, 4, 6 lore just off of that 1 drop, which gets you so close to winning very, very quickly. Olaf in a lot of cases is a budget Lilo / Maleficent, as most of the time it's going to be able to survive 1 hit, so it'll actually be able to quest twice, yielding you 2 lore anyway. So it doesn't apply as much threat. The majority of cases you're going to be getting only 2 lore out of those cards. We have 2 ways of refueling our aggro engine in a sense. This could be because we've had our cards discarded or we've had removal used on us, and that is the free cost Maleficent on play draw a card, and the Hades grab a character card from the discard pile and put it back into our hand so that we can recycle our resources. Our last key card is unfortunately a very expensive card, clocking in at around $50 usually, and that is Rapunzel. This card's kind of insane, and it's unfortunate that it's probably necessary in this deck because not only can you keep your board alive by healing, but you can also draw a card for every point of health that you healed, so it ends up filling multiple roles within the deck. And the icing on the cake is that it quests for 2 as well, so it does apply a pretty good amount of pressure with a 1/5 stat line to stay alive. Our first and most obvious combo, but I'm sure most of you are aware with already, is comboing the 1-drop Lilo and Maleficent with a Simba on turn 2. This will allow us to exert on the turn it's played, thereby protecting our 1-drop and hopefully letting it quest 2 or 3 more times if our opponent doesn't have an answer, which could end up yielding 4, 6, 8 lore, which is an insane amount of pressure to apply, 4 turns into the game. Another thing to keep in mind is that after you play the free cost Maleficent on turn 3 and you draw a card, you can actually draw more cards by singing with friends on the other side, which is basically a pot of greed. You definitely want to keep this in mind for the mulligan and keeping a Maleficent and friends on the other side in hand, because if you have a lot of 1-drops and you're playing them early, you're going to run out of cards very quickly while you're inking. So having these draw engines is essential to being able to continue to apply pressure onto your opponent throughout the match. Maximus is a very strong bodyguard that comes in around the mid game, and it can give your other characters support, which will let them essentially trade for higher value. So if you have a 1 or a 2 drop that usually doesn't have very good stats, you could support with bodyguard after questing on Maximus, thereby giving it +4 attack, which could let you trade into a 4 or 5 drop for an insane value exchange. What makes Maximus really good in this deck is that after doing that and you have bodyguard set up because he's exerted, if your opponent isn't able to quite finish him off and they're going for a 2-turn clear, then you can actually use Rapunzel on the next turn to heal the damage back up, thereby protecting your cards, keeping the Maximus as alive as a bodyguard threat, and drawing cards for every health that you heal. And let's say that your Simba survived the first turn and it's still alive. Rather than questing for 1, you could actually sing with it to play Be Our Guest to draw another card, since you want the Simba to be exerted anyway. This is also a really good consistency tool, because if you're looking for a mid-game drop, then you'll be able to search for it with Be Our Guest. If you wanted to experiment with the list a bit or don't quite have all the cards, then these are some cards you could consider adding into the deck there. First up is Surface Stitch. This is a way to add some more late game to your deck and some more draw. The only problem with this is that it comes in way too late and you wouldn't necessarily be able to set up the required conditions to benefit off of Stitch. If you did want to run late game options like Surface Stitch, another card you can consider is Lantern for the ramp. This will let you access those cards in a more reasonable time frame before Be Prepared comes on the board. Rockstar Stitch is another okay option, but in this deck specifically, our small drops are really valuable because they quest for large amounts, so you genuinely wouldn't want to exert them because then your opponent can clear them quite easily. For once in a video, I have not forgotten you have forgotten me, and this deck is a very nice consideration, as in the aggro mirror, you can get rid of some of your opponent's tempo and thereby win the tempo game that way, or in a control mirror, you can hopefully get rid of some of your opponent's cards, thereby hurting the resources they can ink with, and if you're really lucky, hurting their curve so that they also lose tempo and can't catch up as easily. Jetsam's an okay evasive option, especially into aggro mirrors, but I think in this deck specifically, it doesn't quest enough in the other matchups to be worth an inclusion. But if you know that you're playing against an invasive deck, or you're likely to see lots of evasive cards, you could consider including it into the list. Now for the mirror specifically, we do have a couple cards to help out. One of those is Rafiki. This card is amazing at dealing with Simbas because of the 3-3 to 2-3 stat line with a 3-3 rush. This way you'll be able to access your opponent's backline and get rid of their high questing cards like the Lilos and like the Maleficents. If you did want to run more Rafikis because you felt they were really valuable, or you're seeing more aggro mirrors, I would recommend cutting the wardrobes in order to include them. Befuddle is a card that I don't usually like in aggro lists, but in this list specifically, because we don't need to put more cards out onto the board, especially if we already have our high questing cards early, and I think Befuddle's a really nice option to get rid of opposing Simbas so that we can get rid of their Lilos and Maleficents in the mirror, or it's quite good into the control matchup because you can get rid of Captain Hooks and Prince Eric's, which are a threat to challenging your Simba. Okay, I think about that covers it. That should give you a pretty good gist of how the deck works, but I know sometimes the best way to learn is to see by example, so I'll show you some gameplay on Pixelborn. Okay guys, and here we are into a game. We have a pretty strong hand here. We don't have any free drops. Actually, I lied. We do have a free drop. We have Mickey Mouse. We have friends on the other side, so if we don't want to quest with Mickey, we can sing with it to draw more cards. The Hades, I don't know if we necessarily need, but by the time we hit turn 4, it might be useful to maybe grab like a Lilo and put it back into our hand. It would be nice to mulligan for a Simba, so I think I'm going to try for that. I kind of want to keep the LaFoe because that's our 2-drop. I don't need to keep the Pascal, but it's a good inkable. So maybe I do anyway. Oh, never mind. I didn't have enough time for a mulligan. We'll play with the hand we've been given. Taking too much time to explain my thought process. Okay, our opponent plays a Duke of Weselton, so without a Simba, it makes it very risky for us to play a Lilo in this scenario because it'll basically be easily traded into. Our Olaf also doesn't particularly trade very well into it, so I think for next turn we're going to be looking at a Pascal play here. Unfortunately, the 2-2 stat line's also quite weak for our LaFoe, so Simba's really important here, and we didn't get a chance to mulligan for it. I do love the new spooky Halloween background. What do you guys think of the current play field? Let me know in the comments. Okay, we've got a Rafiki, so that's probably good in this situation when we're going second to flip the tempo back in our favor. Yeah, I think we just got to go for the Pascal here, so we'll ink the Olaf and then we'll play down the Pascal and end our turn. What's good about playing the LaFoe here into the Rafiki is we could play the LaFoe, so we get a 2-drop on the board that quests for 2, and then the next turn we can play the Rafiki to trade it into the Weselton. I'm going to keep the Pascal here because Pascal's really good, so we're going to look for something else to ink. I think in this case, because we're planning on playing the Rafiki, the best ink option is the Mickey Mouse. Play the LaFoe, this will activate Pascal's evasive, so now we can safely quest with Pascal and pass turn. Currently our opponent does still have the tempo here, they're questing for free. We can also quest for free, but we're a turn behind, so we'll be aiming to flip that with Rafiki next turn. Looks like they're playing an Emerald Sapphire list, which is quite aggro, but with some forms of removal. So we're probably going to be aiming for some 2-to-1 trades with Rafiki. So we could trade Rafiki into Duke, and the next turn trade it into Cheshire if they don't trade their Flint into us. Simba's come a little bit too late here, but this is a really interesting choice here. I think in this matchup, we can't afford to give up tempo. So I think we ink for friends on the other side, which will allow us next turn to play Simba plus 2 1-drops. And then this turn we play Rafiki. And now they can't cleanly trade into our LaFoe, so we can safely quest for 2, and the tempo's flipped in our favor. Okay, so our opponent's played a Mickey Mouse to ramp, giving up even more tempo, which is good for us. Definitely think we'll trade the Rafiki into the Cheshire Cat here. That's a 1-to-1 trade, that's pretty simple. Unfortunately, we don't have any other cards to ink, so I think we're going to have to make the tough decision. Oh, actually, we could go for a Simba plus Lilo, or we could ink for Pascal and play our Hades to cycle the Rafiki back into our hand, which gives us more removal tools to control the board. If they do try and go for a 2-turn trade with the Mickey into the LaFoe, then our Rafiki is going to be a very good way of clearing that. And Rafiki trades really nice into Mad Hatter as well. Hades also trades nicely into Mickey, so hopefully we should be able to get rid of their card advantage quite quickly here and control the board. Especially if they're just going to sit there questing. Ooh, Friends on the other side makes Hades really interesting, but I think we need to clear the board this turn. So I think we go for a Mickey Hades trade, and we can't trade the Pascal. I think we still do go for the Rafiki. We trade that into the Flynn, which means we will have to discard a card from our hand. We'll discard the Hades because it's uninkable, so that's slightly less valuable to us. Next turn, we can, hopefully sing the Friends on the other side to reduce our hand. So we'll play the Lilo this turn. Do we quest with the Simba? I think we hold on to the Simba. Because the Simba's a really solid card to play. And they don't have any wide board clears. They're playing green and blue. They only have single target clears. So our wide deck is very well adapted to being able to beat them in this scenario. As long as we properly clear their threats that quest for a lot, like the Mad Hatter. Should be able to get a 2-for-1 trade into the Mad Hatter once we quest with a Hades and a Pascal. Be pretty nice. Okay, they bounce the Lilo. They're scared of that threat. We're starting to clear our board now because they know that we have the tempo. So in this scenario, I'm gonna keep the Rafiki alive. I'm gonna sing Friends on the other side, so this will give us some more draw options. I think the best play here is to go really wide because we want to apply some pressure to win the game. So we'll get rid of their Mad Hatter with our Hades. So that will let them draw a card, unfortunately, but we really do just have to get rid of it. I think it's fine to just quest with Pascal here because every little quest counts, and if they trade the Genie into the Pascal, then that's another 2 quests they're not getting. I think we ink. Or we can protect it with a Simba of a Maximus. I think we do go wide. The question is, what do we ink? I think because we're going wide, we ink one of the 2 drops. Which, in this case, I think will be Simba, because we only really need 1 Simba right now. Then we can play LaFoe, Lilo, and then Simba comes into play exerted. And yeah, this will let us play Maximus next turn as well. Our opponent's in a really sticky situation here. They only have +2 on the board. We have +7. Just so close to winning the game. I think their best play here, it depends. If they can quest with Genie this turn and then put something on the board next turn that will let them quest for the win. Ooh, another Genie is good because I think they do have to clear our board now because 2 quest isn't going to be enough for them to win next turn. Because they get to 13 this turn and then they could only get to 17 on the turn after. Okay, cool. So they use up 2 lore, essentially, opportunity cost to get rid of our 1 lore. So this is a perfect situation for us. So we can just play the Maximus in Bodyguard. I think we hold the Simba in hand. There's no point inking it yet because we might end up wanting to play it. Because we could ink and then go 2-4. So then I think we quest with these cards here. And we go for the win on the next turn. It would take 2 Genies in order to clear the Maximus, and it would get rid of both of the Genies, so they're going to need some other tool here to win the game. And that's GG, we win. Nothing they can do. So even in the aggro mirror, we've come out on top purely by applying so much pressure that our opponent can't keep up with it without some form of area removal. And even if we go up against area removal, oftentimes that area removal comes in too late into the game for them to be able to react. And GG, that's a win. I hope you guys enjoyed that example of the Amber Amethyst aggro matchup. It's a really effective deck, quite easy to pick up and learn to play, and could probably help you win some tournaments.